This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. Coming up on the show, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth tears apart woke DEI policies and declares there'll be no more fat troops.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
Lefties are feeling very triggered today. The hosts of The View are absolutely freaking out about this. Also, Don Lemon is lashing out at white men.
White men, something is broken. Something is cracked deep inside.
And Bill Maher calls out the media for ignoring the slaughtering of Christians in Nigeria.
It's pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck.
Well, according to CNN, the biggest threat to free speech that we've seen in recent weeks is not the devastating assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, but it's that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off air for a few nights for deliberately lying about the murder. Now, CNN has put on an hour-long special labelled No Laughing Matter, Free Speech Under Attack.
Jimmy Kimmel's suspension from ABC sparked an immediate and heated debate over the First Amendment and censorship. To be clear, television networks are legally allowed to suspend or cancel any shows they want. And they have a long history of doing so when it comes to controversies involving their stars or cast members. But Kimmel's suspension was different because it involved a mix of politics, the president, and the power of his administration when it comes to its critics. In this next hour, CNN's Jake Tapper walks us through how the decision to suspend Kimmel unfolded, the role of the FCC, ABC's affiliate stations, and its parent company, Disney. And he speaks to leading First Amendment scholars about the direction we're heading when it comes to free speech.
Yet the left seriously believe that Jimmy Kimmel was the real victim of September 10. And it hasn't taken his audience long to switch right off from Jimmy Kimmel Live. His show has already seen a 64% drop in the ratings since his pathetic return, where he offered no apology and pretended to cry. Now, Rosie O'Donnell, she's spoken to MSNBC host Nicole Wallace, and she's still promoting her anti-Trump agenda. She has even admitted that her case of TDS is so bad that her therapist can't even help her out.
He's not stopped now. We have lost our country. And I don't know, Nicole, how it is that some people cannot see it. My therapist said, "Why are you so upset?" And I said to her, "Why are you not?"
Yeah. Yeah, I have that conversation too, because the gaslighting that I think you're alluding to, if you're a thoughtful, informed person, you do stop and say, well, maybe it is me.
Unbearable. Now, how is ex-CNN host Don Lemon going? Well, he's just delivered his most unhinged rant yet, aimed at white men.
White men, something is broken. Something is cracked deep inside when so many of you believe the answer to fear, to loss, to change is violence. Are you listening to me? I hope I'm saying it loud enough for the people in the back.
Joining us now is CJ Pearson, RNC Youth Advisory Co-Chair. CJ Pearson, thank you so much for joining us once again. Let's just look at the media that we've been seeing in the last week. We've had an hour-long CNN special on what should have been about Charlie Kirk, but it was instead about Jimmy Kimmel and how he's the victim. We've heard from Rosie O'Donnell telling MSNBC's Nicole Wallace that her therapist is struggling to help her with her insane levels of hate, I should say, for the president. And according to Don Lemon, well, white men are just the worst, and they are the only group causing violence. CJ, can I get your reaction?
Well, it's interesting to me that Don Lemon has such a problem with white men, considering he goes home to bed with one every single night, right? And so that's my thing about some of these people that's so interesting, is that they actually never really believe what they say. I don't think Rosie O'Donnell believes what he says. Rosie O'Donnell once said that she would leave America if President Trump became president. And here she is still, of course, giving us her incredible presence here. And you look at, these other folks, right? Jimmy Kimmel, his situation, they said that President Trump was being a dictator by removing him from the air. Now, I don't know how dictatorships work. I'm blessed to live in the United States of America, where I don't live in one. But last time I checked, if we lived in a dictatorship, you wouldn't be able just to go back on the air whenever you pleased, just at your own whim, right? And so I think, again, it goes to show these people have no idea what they're talking about. They're absolutely just completely trying to manipulate the American people with their emotions. And I don't think the American people are buying it. I think that we're completely past that, and it's for good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm just looking at all of those clips, I think no wonder no one watches the mainstream media anymore. Let's talk about Pete Hegseth. He has declared war on fat generals. He told service members to resign if they don't like his message of eliminating woke diversity measures. In a speech before hundreds of commanders in Virginia, he told troops that the military's sole mission is preparing for war and preparing to win. Listen to this.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
He also said we became the woke department, but not anymore. No more identity months, no more DEI officers, no more climate change worship, no more division, distraction, or gender delusions. We are done with that. And to our enemies, FAFO. I mean, I think it's absolutely brilliant. What did you make of it?
I think it was an incredible speech from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. It's one of which that actually made me want to go on a run. And I'm not even an admiral, right? And so I think, what he exactly encouraged today is exactly what our troops need to hear, that we are going to practice the peace through strength, ideals that have made America safe, that have kept America safe. And I think the reiteration of it is exactly what he said. It's FAFO. And I think that our enemies ought to figure that out very quickly. And the only way they're going to figure that out is if we don't treat our military as some type of social experiment, but as a war-fighting machine. And it's exactly what Pete Hegseth is retooling our military to exactly be.
But it's interesting, the woke hosts of The View are genuinely devastated to hear that the Secretary of War does not want fat troops. They're having almost a cry about it. Let's just take a listen to this.
I'm actually really befuddled by why he did that. The optics were terrible, meaning all of our top military brass are all in one place, and we spent $6 million to get them there. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. It also didn't make a lot of sense to me that he was saying that he was going to toughen physical standards and review the anti-hazing policy by sort of implementing a hazing policy. And then also he said he was going to return to the highest male standard for combat positions because the troops were fat. Yeah. I don't understand how that was supposed to be an uplifting message for our military.
Maybe he's referring to Colonel Sanders.
CJ, so Sunny Hostin cannot understand why Pete Hegseth would want to toughen the physical standards. So these hosts, I think they want the US military, the troops to be overweight, to not be at peak fitness levels if they have to fight.
These people are delusional. I think every single word, they prove that to be true. Yeah. The idea that it's some radical right-wing notion to want our military troops to be fit, to be strong, to be, mentally tough is absolutely absurd in every which way. And so for them to act like as if this was some divisive speech, no, it's divisive for the people that have no business leading our troops, no business being among the top brass. And so if they disagree with it, as Secretary of War Hegseth said, they ought to resign and do the American people a favor.
Now, CJ, it's been 3 weeks since Charlie Kirk was murdered in the most horrific way imaginable, and Democrat Ilhan Omar just can't find it in her heart to say anything respectful about the brilliant Charlie Kirk. Listen to this.
I have nothing to apologize for. It is a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was killed in that way. I feel for his widow and his children. They will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But there is no legacy to honor. It was a legacy filled with bigotry, hatred, and white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And as a Black woman and as a Muslim in this country, I refuse to join the chorus that changes the history of what is on the record from this man.
CJ, she says there's no legacy to honour, again calling him a white supremacist. Can I get your thoughts?
It's absolutely disgusting. In the same way that she can't find any nice words to say about Charlie Kirk, she oftentimes can't find any nice words to say about America, because that's exactly the type of person who she is. And she reminds us of that every single day. She wants to talk about the legacy of Charlie Kirk. I'll talk about the legacy of Charlie Kirk. This was a man who prided his entire life on free speech, the exchange of ideas, regardless of whether or not you agreed with him or not. Mm-hmm. He would go into the lion's den, he would go into the belly of the beast and simply state his case. And he would encourage you, he would invite you to challenge him. And you know what? That's what makes America America. The idea that he was some white supremacist because he was anti-DEI, anti-affirmative action, maybe that's your own bigotry peeking through. Mm-hmm. Because here's the deal. I don't need DEI to be successful. I've never needed affirmative action to thrive in this nation. And so the idea that somehow, some way, Charlie Kirk is some big and avowed racist because he didn't support those things is absolutely disgusting. And Ilhan Omar, I can't even begin to say just how disgusting, she is in her rhetoric and how she speaks about this country, how she speaks about, incredible luminaries like Charlie Kirk. Yeah. But I think your audience probably knows a lot about that. And so I'll leave it to them.
100%. Well said, CJ. Let's talk about the legacy that is living on, the legacy of Charlie Kirk. There is a generation of Charlie Kirks right now living more boldly, more truthfully because of Charlie Kirk and the amazing person that he was and everything that he did. And right now we're seeing thousands of people, they're returning to church. They are also wearing the Freedom T-shirt. So thousands of people at Penn State football put on Charlie Kirk's Freedom T-shirt at Saturday night's game against Oregon, and the footage and photos of the students wearing the shirts, I should say, went absolutely viral around social media. And looking at this, it's just one example of how many, many people right around America are honouring his legacy, CJ.
You're exactly right. I mean, there's a revival happening in this country right now where you have people who were once afraid to stand on their values, to stand up for their beliefs, and to proudly proclaim that they were conservative and proud to be an American are now saying, I'm no longer going to censor myself. I'm no longer going to hide in the shadows. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to stand in my truth. And I'm so glad to see it, because that's exactly what Charlie would have wanted. We can no longer be the silent majority in this country. We see where that has gotten us. We have to be the loudest held majority that's going to fight for our country, fight for our values, and do everything that we can to advance them, because America is not great because of people that sat on the sidelines. America is great because people that forced themselves to the front lines and said that we will not allow America to be diluted. We will not allow America to be dissipated. And I got to say, I am so excited about what the future holds, because Charlie's legacy is not just alive, but it's alive and well.
Absolutely. Now, Fox News has obtained note cards that Joe Biden used to use during live events. Now, they include 5 different palm cards. And just looking at what's on them, it's so telling about Joe Biden's state. He had bios and photo reminders of people, including Hillary Clinton. He needed a photo reminder of Hillary Clinton and her bio. The short note detailed that she was the Secretary of State in the Obama-Biden administration, in case Joe Biden forgot. I mean, no wonder Donald Trump put up a photo of the auto pen at the White House instead of a photograph of Joe Biden, because he had no idea what was going on, CJ.
Yeah, you're exactly right, which is why I'm so excited to have a president who actually does know what's going on, and we've reaped the benefits of it. We see an America that's now leading from the front, an America that is guided by peace through strength, not weakness through inaction. And President Trump has reimagined this country in a way in which I think only he could. And so, I'm not surprised by this breaking news. I'm not surprised by this developing story. I think we're only at the beginning of what we're going to learn about just how much Joe Biden didn't know. But I think there ought to be an investigation into who actually benefited from this the former president's, lack of knowledge about what was actually going on in his White House, because it actually kind of is on the brink of a legal action, right? The idea that any staffer could just use an auto pen to direct presidential actions, I think it warrants an investigation, and I think it should be a very swift one.
Just finally, woke celebrity Ariana Grande reposted an anti-Trump message. She shared this podcast host, Matt Bernstein's Instagram post that blasted voters who cast their ballots for Donald Trump instead of Kamala Harris in 2024. Now, the White House has issued a fiery response in a statement saying, "Save your tears, Ariana, because President Trump's actions ended Joe Biden's inflation crisis and are bringing in trillions in new investments." I mean, CJ, look at this and it's just no surprise. There are so many Hollywood celebrities or woke celebrities, I should say, that are still trying to push an anti-Trump message on social media and actually they actually wish that Kamala Harris was president right now. And I think her latest media tour has just reminded everyone how grateful we are that she did not get elected.
No, you're exactly right. And Ariana Grande, in her post asked the question, have your lives gotten better? Hell yes, it has, Ariana. I think many people would agree with that here in America. And so here's the deal about these Hollywood folks who are so out of touch, these elitists. The American people rejected you on November 5th, 2024, and we have no intention of going back, none at all. And so Ariana Grande, maybe she should get back in the studio and out of the pulpit, because no one wants to hear a single thing she has to say about political issues here in this country.
CJ Pearson, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair, thank you so much for joining us. Real-time host Bill Maher has slammed the media for failing to report on the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria by Islamist groups. Joining us now is Bernard Tutunji, National Director of Aid to the Church in Need in Australia and New Zealand. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Can we just start off by listening to what Bill Maher had to say?
I mean, the fact that this issue has not gotten on people's radar.
Right, no one's talking about it.
It's pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. You are in a bubble. And again, I'm not a Christian, but they are systematically killing the Christians in Nigeria. They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are their Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. They are literally attempting to wipe out the Christian population of an entire country. Where are the kids protesting this?
Thank you. Because no one will talk about it, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Bernard, he makes such an excellent point that this is largely being ignored by the media, and there are plenty of young people who are happy to go out and demonstrate against Israel and taking part in pro-Palestine demonstrations, yet are silent about what's happening in Nigeria. Why do you think this is?
Look, thanks, Gabriella. Problem one, I think it's being generally ignored because most people don't know about it. But problem two, why is it being ignored by the mainstream news? Look, the mainstream news media cares about what it wants to care about. And we know that two groups get little airtime, Africans and Christians. It's really the precise reason that one of Aid to the Church in Need's core works is around advocacy. For 25 years, we've published what we call the Religious Freedom in the World Report, global overview, 196 countries, 900 pages. It looks at where people can practice their faith, all faiths, and where they face discrimination, oppression, or outright persecution. And at one point, there were 4 of these major global reports on religious freedom. Today, there are just 2. There's the US State Department and our report. And even that tells you something. Ours is unique because it's the only non-governmental report that looks at Christian principles and the on-the-ground realities. But to be honest, it's the value of networks like Sky News, presenters like yourself, bringing this to the fore.
There are reports, one by Nigeria-based human rights NGO International Society for Civil Liberties and the Rule of Law Inter-Society, found that there's an average of more than 30 Christians in Nigeria being killed every single day. More than 7,000 Christians had been killed in Nigeria this year. Yet Nigeria has pushed back against reports such as those. Its Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying earlier that this year that there's plenty of misinformation and misleading reports regarding the supposed targeted killings of Christians. Can I get your response to that?
Yeah, the government's speaking nonsense and hoping the world doesn't pay attention. Nigeria today is an epicenter of Christian martyrdom. Since the year 2000, more than 60,000 Christians have been murdered by Islamist groups like Boko Haram, heavily armed Fulani militia. Our organisation's 2023 report I mentioned places Nigeria firmly in the red category, meaning it's persecution, it's not just discrimination. You know, what makes Nigeria unique is that Christians are not even a tiny minority. They make up almost half the population, 100 million people, yet they live as if they're second-class citizens, especially in the north. The Nigerian government's failed to take any meaningful action to prevent attacks, and the violence is relentless. In Benue State alone, one diocese recorded 93 villages attacked, 330 farmers killed in just a year. This past June, a couple months ago, another attack in Benue. A gunman raided a town, killed 100 people, forced 4,000 to leave. And it's not just killings, Gabriella. We're speaking of abductions, burned villages, destruction of churches, millions forced into camps where they lack even the basics. And every single day, Nigerian Christians wake up to the fresh news of kidnappings or attacks. It's not sporadic, it's systematic, it's targeted, it's gone on for decades with little accountability.
Absolutely horrific. Can you talk to us about how the aid to the Church in Need supports the suffering, oppressed and persecuted Christians?
Yeah, sure. Look, for 80 years, the work of HCN has been to keep the faith alive, as we say, in those places where it's under greatest assault through persecution, oppression, poverty. We're not humanitarian or a development agency. We're what's called a pastoral agency. Our work is to sustain the faith directly. So we build, or in the case of Africa, rebuild churches often, sustain poor nuns, priests, provide them with means of transport. In all, we undertake about 6,000 projects a year, completely funded by, in our case, Catholics around the world, no funding from church or state. But the work we do for the suffering churches, we call it, inspires and brings back life to us. I think our founder used to say they're being tested in faith and we're being tested in love. And the resilience of the Nigerian church to just keep on that is incredible. You know, the daily threats, the priests and sisters traveling to remote villages at risk of their lives. We have had to do things that no spiritual charity ever thought it would do. We built high fences around seminaries. We provide enclosed vehicles. We fund trauma healing. So this persecution, from what we see it deepens faith. And the church in Nigeria is young and vibrant. Attendance is high. And the blood of the martyrs remains the seed of Christians, the same in Nigeria as it has been right throughout the history.
Bernard, before I let you go, I just want to ask you about what's happening in the US. We're seeing more attacks, certainly targeting churches in the United States. Those attacks have increased significantly in recent years, according to a report. And of course, that horrific shooting at a Minnesota Catholic school is just one of the latest examples. What do you put this rise in attacks on churches down to in the US?
For me, it's an easy question. I really put it down to a loss of faith. It's not just the USA. There have been more than 100 arson attacks on churches in France in the last 5 years. 50 years ago, the entire Western world threw off what they deemed to be the shackles of the collective Christian faith. And so now, over 2 generations later, we've moved from a society of at least a cultural faith to a hatred towards faith, Christian faith anyway. But the thing is, the Christian faith, it isn't just Sunday school and grace before meals. It's a whole world overview. Now, instead of worshiping the Creator, we worship the climate. We build massive places of worship called shopping centres. We eat, we drink, we marry. And in that same movement of secularization, we've moved towards an intolerance, because I think deep down, people know that some of their moral, ethical, and life choices are not so good. We shoot the messenger, and there's no shortage of examples. 2,000 years ago, King Herod put the head of John the Baptist on a plate because he told him he shouldn't commit adultery. 3 weeks ago, someone shot Charlie Kirk in the head because the person didn't want to be told that a person's sex is an 8. None of us like being confronted about our sins and failings. Christians don't like it either. I don't. But Christianity provides a framework and a system to better oneself. Radical secularization preaches intolerance. So, the news will continue to see violence against Christians and Christian churches.
Bernard Tatunji, National Director of Aid in the Church in Need, Australia and New Zealand. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gabriella. See you later.
Joining us now is former Labor Senator and Sky News contributor Stephen Conroy. Stephen Conroy, it is great to see you again. It's been a little while. Anthony Albanese has been on a taxpayer-funded tour of the UK where he met with British PM Keir Starmer and seemed to have taken aim at Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Anthony Albanese said that he doesn't want to see the rise of populist organisations such as Reform UK. Now, just this week, it's been revealed in an Ipsos poll that Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in British history. And the man who is soaring in the polls, of course, is Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Now, Farage has blasted Anthony Albanese as totally out of touch. Speaking to News Corp Australia, he said that voters have had enough, and Albanese has failed to recognise the current shift in political sentiment across the West. He said he's totally out of touch with the huge changes in the UK and elsewhere across the West. And this is what he had to say on Paul Murray Live.
No, I'm afraid the Australian PM not only didn't reach out, but he made it clear that he doesn't want to meet me. He thinks my politics are unacceptable. Made it very, very clear that he wanted nothing to do with me, which, when you think about it, long term is pretty stupid.
Stephen Conroy, do you agree? Was it a stupid move?
Look, I would agree with almost nothing that Nigel Farage has to say on any issue. The British election is 4 years away. Anthony Albanese is entitled to meet or not meet individuals. I don't think he met the Conservative leader either. I mean, the fact that Nigel Farage has a very pumped up opinion of himself when he barely holds any seats in the British Parliament is a matter for Nigel Farage. So I think the Prime Minister has known Keir Starmer a long time. He would obviously be supporting his re-election in 4 years' time. And it's no surprise. And in fact, it's important that he support and be seen to support Keir Starmer because the UK are the third leg of AUKUS. So it is important that we work together with the UK on the new nuclear sub that the UK and Australia are going to build and design, and as an increase on the Virginia subs, which now seems certain. But Nigel Farage's puffed up sense of himself is fine. He's entitled to take a view of himself that he's the most important person in the UK.
Well, it's not just Nigel Farage who thinks that. I think plenty of people in the UK making it clear that they prefer him to lead. But we'll see what happens. As you say, it's years away. Anthony Albanese managed to get a selfie with Donald Trump while he was in New York. And Donald Trump is finally going to make some time for Anthony Albanese. That meeting will be happening in 3 weeks' time. There are still concerns, though, that this relationship between Australia and the US is pretty tense right now, and it doesn't really help. Well, I suppose there's a lot of commentary that it doesn't really help that we have Kevin Rudd as the ambassador to the US, someone who has called Donald Trump a village idiot in the past. And of course, America is supposed to be our most important ally. It's now coming up to the 1 year mark since Donald Trump was elected, and it's really been some time. Anthony Albanese has been snubbed in the past. Now this meeting's finally going to happen on October 20. Stephen, is it going to be a success?
Well, look, I think you're starting to emerge that the AUKUS submarine deal appears to be going to be approved by the administration. They're entitled to do a review. We've worked hard behind the scenes, and we've always made it clear that this AUKUS pact is good for the US and the UK and Australia. It's a win-win-win. So for those who wanted it to fall over, wanted Trump to axe it, they're going to be disappointed. But the Prime Minister and Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister, Defence Minister, have always been very confident that they would be able to make clear and explain the benefits. We are putting billions of dollars into helping the Americans fix their supply chain issues on Virginia subs. They've fallen behind their own target. That's why there's been concern. Not that Australia's receiving and buying their subs. It's been that the Americans have fallen behind their manufacturing process, and Australia is contributing billions to get their supply chain up to speed. And on the question of how long it's taken to meet Donald Trump, I mean, this idea that somehow Australia's out there, Robinson Crusoe, that, the relationship's in danger. Donald Trump has gone to, effectively try and destroy the Canadian government and, be contemptuous to Canada. I mean, how do you have a fight with Canadians? I know Canadians. It's almost impossible to have a fight with them. He's attacked Mexico. He has attacked all the countries in Europe. So when Nigel Farage says about, changes in the West, there's no changes in Europe. And Nigel Farage might think he's the most important person in the UK, but there's significant Western countries that are backing Australia's position and not being sycophants to Donald Trump. I mean, the Australian public, all the polling here, Gab, is that 70% of them really don't think Donald Trump's much of a leader. And so Anthony Albanese has to tread a fine line between sycophancy, standing up for Australia's national sovereign interests and balancing our China trade deal. And I think the Australian public are giving Anthony Albanese a resounding tick if you look at all the polls at the moment. So I think that, Albo has absolutely steered the middle ground, calm and not being flustered and, giving in to Donald Trump's bullying. And I think the Australian people respect and admire Anthony Albanese for that.
I want to talk to you about Trump's 20-point plan that he's released for peace in Gaza. He's given Hamas just days to accept a peace proposal for the war in Gaza and has warned that it would be a very sad end if the terrorist group were to reject the plan. Now, yesterday, of course, we saw Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreeing to back the peace proposal as he spoke alongside Donald Trump at a media conference in Washington, D.C. Stephen, what do you make of this plan? How likely is it that Hamas will accept it?
Well, look, firstly, it's great to see a plan on the table, and it is now in Hamas's court. Hamas are prepared to fight to the last drop of Palestinian blood to try and discredit Israel. They started this war. They butchered and massacred, civilian Israelis at a festival. I mean, this is an atrocity that all these people out there campaigning for a Palestinian state just refuse to acknowledge. They refuse to acknowledge that Hamas use Palestinians as human shields while they go about waging war on Israel. So if they had had any decency or care for the Palestinian people, they would have surrendered months or years ago, disarmed, and allow a peace process to get going. But they have shown no willingness up to now. I mean, I hope that the pressure from all the other Middle East countries, and I don't think there's one that said they oppose this deal, that pressure can force Hamas to accept this peace deal and accept that they have no role going forward in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank.
Yeah. Stephen, I want to talk to you about what's happening in Victoria. Victorian Liberal Party leader Brad Batten has pledged to keep transgender prisoners convicted of violent sex crimes out of women's prisons. Now, this comes after a father who sexually abused his 5-year-old daughter was placed in a female correctional centre. I mean, it's unbelievable that could have taken place. Do you support Brad Batten here?
Look, I think I would certainly want a review of, firstly, the sentence and the excuse the magistrate gave for such a soft sentence. So I think there needs to be a review of that, and the state government need to go in hard on that one. It's just not acceptable when you've molested your own child. Secondly, on the issue of transgender males who are transitioning or finished the transition being in women's prisons, even Nicola Sturgeon, a champion of this issue, realised it was a disaster publicly. And it was the beginning, and Nicola Sturgeon was the leader of the Scottish National Party in Scotland, and she was saying that this was good and this should be done. Even she ultimately lost her job. And this was one of the key issues that turned so badly against her. So I think the Victorian government have got to seriously reconsider their position here. And that they need to say no to this. Absolutely.
Also, the crime in Victoria, Jacinta Allen's being slammed for really failing to crack down on the state's crime crisis. I'm hearing so often plenty of Victorians speaking out about living in fear. In a recent incident, 4 teenage boys drove a stolen car into Melbourne's Burke Street shopping mall, leading to a woman being hospitalised. I mean, really, Jacinta Allen's failing to crack down on crime, isn't she?
No, look, I think she's passed some good legislation that hasn't all come into effect yet. More machetes are being handed in than the Liberals
the machete
said
bin.
that they... But they're being handed in. I mean, the policy so far has been pretty successful. Now, does that mean the hardened criminal gang elements I mean, where I think
Stephen, I think Victoria is becoming a laughing stock around the world because of these machete bins. I don't think that's the solution to the crime crisis.
No, let's be clear. The claim that it costs $300,000 per bin is just false. Just false.
I think the issue is more the concept that criminals that were thinking about carrying out a machete attack are all of a sudden going to think again and hand in their machetes.
Well, there seems to be far more machetes being put into those bins than anyone wants to give the government credit for. But to the core of the issue, the Victorian government need to understand that many of these under 18 kids are not just a wayward waif who's got problems at home or needs to flee home, and you've got to treat them in a different way. I think they need to understand that they are being paid by organised crime to commit many of these crimes that they are committing. And they need to be hard-nosed about how they want to deal with kids getting paid to go and commit crimes. They're not, some kid who's been caught shoplifting, and has left home. These are hardened criminal gangs that are paying kids to commit these crimes. I think the Victorian government just needs to take that context, not the traditional context that they're children who've lost their way. This is not what is happening in Victoria.
Stephen Conroy, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Great to talk again.
Joining us now is barrister and broadcaster and president of Octopus TV, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, it is wonderful to see you again.
It's always lovely to see you, Gabriella.
Let's talk about Fergie, because there are reports that Sarah Ferguson is facing losing her Freedom of York honour over the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, just like her ex-husband. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, it's sad, isn't it? Because she continues to sink deeper and deeper into the reputational quicksand. And this was a gift to both Prince Andrew and Fergie for their wedding in 1986. Well, I bet they would have preferred the toaster, because she's certainly toast now. And what's going to happen? Prince Andrew, he lost the title a couple of years ago, and they're now debating in York. They're going to have a meeting in November saying, well, should Fergie also lose her title? And this is all to do, and we talked about this last week, it's all to do with the revelations about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Yes. And the money that was given to her by him, £15,000. She then tried to distance herself from it in a correspondence with the media, saying, well, she would never want to be associated with him at all. She then sent this sort of grovelling apology, which has come to light. And what's happened as a result? She lost lots of her charities that she was involved with. And now Claire Douglas, who's the York Council leader, she says there's a full council meeting of all York City councillors next November, and they're going to be discussing whether she should indeed be stripped of that honour, the freedom of the city of York, a glorious city. But poor old Fergie, that's what happens. And there's so much we talked about Fergie. She's sort of embroiled with all sorts of scandals, from sucking toe photos, you might remember, to allegations of a £500,000 access bribe to get to Prince Andrew. Now people want to stay away from him, probably pay £500,000 just to stay as far away as possible.
Well, and there are also reports about Princess Beatrice, that she's said to have lost all hope of becoming a working royal thanks to this deepening scandal engulfing the House of York. And, I really feel sorry for her in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. And she's a really hard-working royal. She's done nothing wrong. And it's all that sort of bad move. She's Prince Charles, or King Charles now. He's always liked her. They've worked on that sort of basis. She was hoping to be able to do more and more royal engagement, because it's exactly that problem, is that they don't have enough working royals. And they need to get them out. But basically because of her, mainly her father, but also the revelations about her mother as well. They sort of think that it's very dangerous because Prince Andrew might come in through the back door. So this is what they're saying. She's probably not going to be able to get as close to being able to do those royal duties as she might hope.
Now, Prince William, he's finally got his way, I suppose, with King Charles bowing to pressure and exiling Prince Andrew. I think, Prince William, he kind of, it appears it's a win for him, really. And I think, Andrew, it shows that Prince William holds a lot of power.
Oh, it certainly does. This is an ongoing battle about how close he wants to be to his uncle. You might remember, and I spoke about this last time at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. Andrew was there with Fergie, and there was a very embarrassing moment when Andrew and William were photographed being very, very close to each other. You can see they were both pretty uncomfortable. So what's happened is he's apparently wants to distance himself. He doesn't want to have any more photographs with Prince Andrew. He doesn't want him to come to Christmases at Balmoral, so he's been banished from that as well. They're not going to be fighting over the Monopoly board anymore. And it's going to be that sort of basis. It's a clear win for the future king, is what they say in this sort of Shakespearean drama that continues to unfurl every week. And basically, they're being sidelined, the Yorks. They're reshaping the monarch's boundaries. And the 43-year-old Prince of Wales, he seems to be calling the shots now. So a very interesting development from that point of view.
And there is so much drama. I mean, we're looking at the royal family. Things are looking pretty good for the royals around Donald Trump's visit to the UK, but there is certainly more turmoil with the royal family, especially around Harry and his father. Now, Prince Harry is accused unnamed palace figures of sabotage. Andrew, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, it's exactly that, isn't it? He had this wonderful visit under an hour, but it was all tea with the king. And we were sort of talking about this last week, saying, at last, hurrah. As predicted, he was going to go and see his father. He said he's going to focus now on the king. It is his father-son relationship. But all sorts of things were leaked about the gifts that might have happened. He said it sort of felt more like a state visit because they exchanged gifts in a rather sort of formal way. Apparently, he gave a photograph, a lovely framed photograph, not of Meghan and Harry, which would have been interesting on the mantelpiece, but rather of the two children, Archie and Lilibet. And basically, he said it felt very cold, however, and he thinks that people within the palace are trying to undermine him. It's very echoey of Princess Diana's thing about the shadowy characters, the men in grey suits, basically trying to poison her in the press and so on and so forth. Right. And Harry certainly seems to share that sort of view. So it's quite a sad sort of moment where we thought it was going to be so positive. We had the pomp and pageantry of the wonderful Trump visit, but this is now sort of leaking and sort of at the sides. The good that has been done seems to be leaking away.
Now, Prince William's opened up about the emotional void left by missing his grandparents. Listen to this.
Miss your grandmother?
I do, actually, yeah. I do miss my grandmother and my grandfather. Yeah, it's been quite a bit of change. So you do sort of, you think about them not being here anymore. Yes. And particularly being in Windsor, for me, Windsor is her, so she loved it here. She spent most of her time here. Showing you around today is very much the case. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing it the way she'd want you to see it. She had her horses here as well, as you can imagine, was a big deal for her. So that's why she loved it.
Andrew, what did you make of that?
Oh, it's a wonderful, powerful interview with, it's in the new Eugene Levy's show, The Reluctant Traveller. It's going to air on the 3rd of October, this coming Friday. And basically what's happened, he was given a tour of Windsor Castle, and it's the Prince of Wales showing his emotional side. He was very, very close to the Queen and indeed to Prince Philip, and he misses them. He does, as he says, I do miss my grandma and my grandfather. It's been quite a change, so you do you think about them not being here anymore, and I think we can all relate to that, people we've lost and so on and so forth. So what's happening is he's revealing his human side, which is very rare for some sort of people that are being far more open about their emotions. But it's again a sort of positive side. It was a fascinating interview, and it's going to be a really interesting series. But they were in Windsor. I was down there for you during Trump's visit, as you remember. And we visited the various pubs that apparently he went to as well. But a very interesting insight into the future king.
Glad you got to see the pubs. That's crucial indeed. I have one
for you. There we go. It's going to be good.
Thank you.
The things I do in the line of duty for you, you know?
It's tough. It is certainly tough. Now, our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has met with King Charles, and he's since ruled out talks of an independence. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, we all know what his views are, and King Charles knows what his views are. So he basically, lots of people were pressurising him. Oh, God, force him to give it back, get rid of the monarchy. He said, look, he had a great conversation with Charles. There was a lot of royal rapport. He just said he wouldn't raise the topic. He knows what's going to happen. He had a lovely visit in Balmoral Castle up there. And he says so he's someone who's conscious about Australia's interest, and he's someone who is very aware of what is happening in Australia. And that that's certainly true. Basically, your wonderful Prime Minister, he became the first Australian Prime Minister to visit Balmoral Castle. I think it's since 1993. And you might remember then that Paul Keating paid a visit to Queen Elizabeth then and informed her that he planned to hold a referendum on abolishing the monarchy. What a great welcome that was. So, yeah, thanks.
No. Yeah, no. Well, I'm glad that there are no talks of independence happening anytime soon. Now, William and Kate, Princess Catherine, they are invited to Australia. They might be heading here after 10 years. I certainly hope so, Andrew.
Well, wouldn't that be lovely? There we go. So they've been invited for a tour down under by your Aussie PM. Obviously shared tea with the King. Much better than say, I want to get rid of you. Why don't you bring your son and daughter-in-law? And basically what he said, he was hopeful. And there was a standing invitation. So nothing formal yet, nothing definitely confirmed, but you'll be the first to know. I'll keep you posted. But basically they're hoping it's going to happen in the coming period, a glorious country. And it would be wonderful to get them down there. What normally happens is the King has to go first, which he did. They had a very successful tour, you might remember, last year. And then basically there's this open invitation. And they did a 9-day tour, Charles and Camilla, last year. And they had and Samoa, Australia and Samoa last October. And there were more than 10,000 people turning out outside Sydney Opera House on the final day. Basically, as I say, the protocol dictates that the new monarch must visit the realm first before the heir to the throne.
Okay.
That's now happened. And obviously what's going to happen. The last time, interestingly, they were there was in April 2014, Prince William and Princess Catherine, when they had a 9-month-old Prince George. And that's what happened. Obviously, George is now 12, and they had Princess Charlotte, who's 10, and Prince Louis, the wonderful Prince Louis, in 7. So it's going to be an interesting sort of visit if it does happen in the not-too-distant future.
Oh, we would love to have them. Be very exciting for us. Now, we've got to talk about Meghan Markle. There's been more signs that Meghan just can't give up her royal life, even though she went off to California in 2020. She can't quite let go of the royal life. What's happened here?
Well, it's wonderful stuff, and it's a sort of a subtle hint, if you like, because she has this glorious series, as you know, flogging. It's like an infomercial all the time, all the different products they sell with the jam and various other things. Well, she's now got these pots and these vases, and she's rearranging flowers, one of which was Queen Anne lace. You get the subtle reference there.
Right.
So any sort of royal connection, and this is what they're saying. But she also basically was rearranging these glorious flowers while the 44-year-old and her husband have since moved to California, and they no longer represent the British royals. They're saying she's desperately hanging on to this sort of side. She also gave us a little tour of her £14 million mansion. So you had a little look at that sort of side. And she shared clips with her 4.2 million followers, basically looking at this glorious side and peddling her wares. In addition, this comes on the back of she used to wear a ring, which has a £3,185, what's called a Queen water drop moonstone ring. There you go. The subtle hint is in the Queen. So any royal hint at all, anybody says, oh, hang about, she's wearing a Queen ring and she's wearing these Queen and she's putting on these Queen and flowers. That's the little thing. Anything royal to do with good old Meghan?
Absolutely. No, it does not surprise me one bit. Now, Thomas Markle claims a fair bit of insight into Meghan Markle's history before she was with Prince Harry. What's been said?
Well, isn't it glorious? Isn't it what everybody wants is for their father to spill the beans on their previous relationships? Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So he doesn't miss an opportunity to come out. And he's done all sorts of more revelations about that. Obviously, she's been married to Harry since 19th of May 2018. They got 2 wonderful children together. But she talked about the previous relationships, including with Trevor Engelson, the American film producer and literary manager. And what happens? They spoke also about her university years. How embarrassing is that? And apparently, he spilled all the beans to the author Tina Brown, saying that she had her pick of the sought-after basketball hunks. And she basically said that her first year of college, she pointed at one guy and said, that's the boy who's going to be my boyfriend. And indeed, he did become her boyfriend. He's probably ready to sell his kiss and tell story as well. Apparently, she was very, very effective with men, is what they did. The first ever boyfriend was apparently Steve Lepore, who was a basketball player, and she met him at freshman year at Northwestern University. They apparently dated for 5 months before he accepted an opportunity at a college in North Carolina. Boy, did he miss out on that Netflix series. She's got to be well. But Andrew Morton also called them quite a pair, and she also had all sorts of other relationships and so on and so forth. What happened happened, however, she felt that her husband wasn't very good at getting her new roles. This is what the revelation was, which is why that relationship didn't survive. She moved on to Harry, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh, and it's been so quiet ever since she's moved on to Harry. Oh, a little bit too much information, I think, from both of them. But Andrew Eborn, thank you so much for your time. Brilliant to speak to you as always.
It's lovely to speak with you, Gabriella. See you next week.